and welcome to the top 10 most likely unseen issues for the February 2019 case study exam on wearable tech manufacturer Vita. So before we start, I'm just going to go through a bit of an introduction to this particular video and where I've got the information on and what you need to do with said information. So how have I come up with these top 10? Well, first of all, you look at the focus in the pre-scene. If there's a lot of material in the pre-scene on a certain topic, then it's likely that there is some kind of importance of that topic. It's likely to be brought up in the exam, so there's more to talk about. And that feeds into the second point here, the degree of importance attached to it by the examiner. But that particular section extends beyond purely what's in the pre-scene, but also what SEMA like to examine. For example, ethics. It may be that there's no real mention of ethics in the case study, but ethics is considered very important by SEMA, and therefore they are likely to examine it. Next is the strategic importance. How important is it to the organization? If a certain topic is very important to the company, for example, say their suppliers. If they rely very heavily on a certain supplier, then it's likely that there might be an issue on the supplier. If something were to happen to that supplier, what impact could that have on the business? And also, just a more general experience in doing these videos in creating mock exams and reviewing exams in the past, the typical kind of issues that come up, and what kind of things have the examiner brought up in the past. And my final point here is about how easy it is to write issues on that subject. The people who write the exams are obviously people too, and they will go for ones that they know, that they can write good questions on. So what do you need to do for these issues? Well, first of all, it's important to prepare key models. So this will be things like your SWOT exam, like SWOT analysis, like your PESTLE analysis. Because building up this information now will help you to adapt the new information given you in the unseen, or help you to have that context to apply the unseen material. Next thing you need to do is practice exam questions on these issues. This will help you to understand the kind of questions that will be asked around these topics and how to answer them. And also, this next section here, it will help you to plan these answers in your mind so that when you go into the exam and you start writing, you'll already have a background in which to apply this new information. You'll already have certain points to bring up in your head as you're writing for them. And I've also put some more generic things here, such as the advantages and disadvantages of these certain topics, where they would be used and how models can be used to support them. So let's move on to the top 10 issues now. And the first issue number 10, is on risk management. And the reason why I've chosen risk management to be one of my top 10 most likely issues is because it's very much a key P3 topic. A huge proportion of the entire syllabus of P3 is all about risk management. And the question could arise around identifying risks. It could also be about risk mapping techniques and risk management techniques. So looking at your COSO cube, looking at your TARA model, looking at an individual project, or looking at the organization as a whole, whatever it may be, looking at those risks, analyzing those risks, and advising the board of directors on those risks, and also looking at whether the controls in place are appropriate or not. And the reason why I've chosen it for this specific pre-scene is that not only is it regularly examined at the strategic case study level, in fact, generally always comes up in a couple of variants, either as a question as a whole or more likely as an add-on issue, and you're analyzing a project and then you're talking about perhaps the risks involved within this particular project. And also because there was simply a lot of information given. There was an entire section in the pre-scene covering those risks. They wouldn't have given us all that information if they didn't expect us to use it at least somewhere in our exam. And so likely issues could be, as I've already mentioned, to a specific project. For example, say that we are going to enter the smartwatch industry, the smartwatch market, and what risks are there involved in there. We're opening ourselves up to more competition. There's a lot of investment involved that may not pay off. We'll be advertising and marketing to a completely different market, or at least partly a different market. And would we be able to get the relevant experience, the relevant knowledge to both create the project and to market it effectively? It could also be to do with risk management and control. Again, on this project, how do we deal with those specific risks that have arisen in the project? How can we effectively manage the risks of the project, or even for the organization as a whole? There have been questions in the past about improving risk management throughout the entire organization, wanting to install a culture of risk management within the pre-seen company, which I've also highlighted on the screen for you now. And an important thing here is to talk about the role of the audit committee and how they oversee and control risk. Essentially, the audit committee is staffed by non-executive directors, which we know they have. We know they have non-executive directors, and we know they have an audit committee. And it's up to the audit committee to install a sense of risk management, a culture of risk management throughout the organization. It's not enough to do it on a reactionary basis. It needs to be proactive. We need to have employees at our organization identifying risks in anything they're working on and not covering them up, not ignoring them or anything like that, but actively thinking, this could be a risk. How are we going to manage this? Can we report this to the line manager? Can we report this to the directors, whoever it may be? Making sure that we have a culture of risk management throughout the organization so that people are actively identifying and reporting risks. And there were some key points in the pre-seen itself. So we have things like competition. We know that competition is very, very intense. In the risk register in the pre-seen, competition was given a 25 out of 25 for risk. So it was a 5 for likelihood and a 5 for impact. And this primarily revolved around smartwatches. So we need to talk about the importance of getting into the smartwatch market, or at least the importance of the threat posed by the smartwatch market. And if we are asked a question on this, we need to think about how we can perhaps effectively enter that market. What are we lacking to get us into that market? Are we lacking the technology to produce it? Are we lacking the staff, the IT capabilities, the intellectual property, etc., needed to produce these things? Can we work with another company in a joint venture to create the project? Other risks are things like damage to our reputation. And there was a huge legal issue given to us in the pre-seen about a rival company, Clown, who had had a class action lawsuit brought against them on behalf of poor readings of their devices. It wasn't reading the heart rate properly. Now, for most people, this would be problematic, but not a huge issue. One of the people involved in this case, they'd actually been specifically told not to let their heart rate go above a certain amount, and the watch was found to be off by an incredible amount. So they could have actually been risking their life due to the inaccurate readings. So looking at how we would stop that from ever happening. We don't want to be a company like Clown that faces that lawsuit. We want to stop that from ever happening. We want to make sure that no product with that level of inaccuracy ever gets released to market. And arguably that is the correct approach, and also the only approach that a company like Vita should be taking, given that our strategy and our mission is all about empowering individuals to lead healthier lives. So we should be ensuring that they have the right technology to do that. Another risk that was given was the inventory, as in that we have a lot of demand and we have two main suppliers and they're really getting close to their limit. So we need to talk about how important it perhaps is to begin sourcing a new supplier to ensure that we've got another supplier that's set up, ready to provide products how we want them, rather than risking being out of stock. Because if we're out of stock at the point where an individual wants to purchase a health and fitness tracker, they may think, well, they might be back in stock in a couple of weeks, but I really need one now, so they might just buy another one instead, and then that's a customer that we've lost. Other issues we might have to bring up could be things like the importance of embedding the risk throughout, which is something I've already mentioned in the previous slide when I said about the importance of the role of the audit committee to install that proactive risk management throughout the organization. Theories that you can use, I've just given you a couple of key bits here, such as in fact the importance of the audit committee. I've already mentioned the TARA model as well, looking at whether you can transfer the risk, perhaps by outsourcing it or insurance. You can accept it if it's minimal enough of a risk, reduce it through mitigation, or just avoid it straight off if it's something that you don't really actually have to be doing. It may not be worth taking the risk. Risk mapping, the importance of using the risk mapping system, which was given in the pre-scene, and how it allows you to rank and score your risks and to treat them one by one in order of importance. And also the cost of risk methodology, which is a key P30 topic. Now, one thing I will say, and because this is something that I've seen many students do over the past, and also something that the examiners themselves have mentioned, is the cost of risk method is quite substantial. I've got an image of it on the screen for you. If you were to try and write an answer and you were to talk about all these different things, strategic, operations, reporting, compliance, subsidiary, objective setting, event identification, and so on, it would take you the entire hour just to write all about those. And that's not what you're going to be tested on. And it's important to remember that at the strategic case study, you are not being tested on your ability to regurgitate theory. You're being tested on your ability to apply it and to strategically evaluate it. So please talk about these sorts of things from a more holistic, strategic perspective, the importance of risk, the importance of risk management, rather than going into huge detail about the specific risk management processes. Issue number 9 is on ethics. And ethics is one of the most commonly examined, probably the most commonly examined strategic case study topic. Appears in most variants, in fact in every single sitting since the strategic case study was introduced in 2015, it has appeared in 2 to 3 variants. So 40 to 60% of you watching this video now will probably get a question on ethics in your exam. And SEMA will want to be seen to be testing on people on ethics. And there was specific focus, health and safety, over the tracker systems in the article, and also the very nature of the industry. So we're looking at improving fitness. We're looking at empowering people to be better with their health and fitness. There's things about children as well, as in helping the childhood obesity crisis by producing trackers for children. It's all a lot of ethics. It all has to be done correctly and above board. Otherwise, we're really at risk of breaching ethics here. And so some likely issues could be to do with material quality, as a result providing a poor end result, such as the data tracker issue, a breach of confidentiality, over information and data use, such as in the Google DeepMind scandal, a failure to adhere to our legal liabilities or any kind of legal litigation breach. Again, as mentioned in those articles, which are really good insights into where the examiner is heading. Damage to our reputation and how that could have a knock-on effect. The importance of our staff members, the importance of not mistreating our staff, the importance of mistreating our suppliers as well, all our different stakeholders, how important they are to the running of our organization, how we should adhere to their wants and needs as much as possible. And also this general overarching idea of ethics versus profitability, and how a company like ours, with a vision like ours, with a mission like ours, with a value creation model like ours, we shouldn't be compromising our ethics for short-term profitability gains. So if that is where any sort of question is heading, it may be best to say this is just not worth the risk. It's not part of who we are as an organization. And other issues that have arisen in the past, and therefore likely to arise again, is the treatment of suppliers. We know that our suppliers are very important to us, but also not just the treatment of suppliers, but ensuring that we are auditing our suppliers to ensure their employees are being treated fairly. For example, when Apple was producing a lot, or having a Chinese manufacturer producing a lot of its goods, it was not checking how the staff were treated there, and they were being mistreated. And so even though Apple had no idea and was not in any way culpable in a common sense perspective, they were still deemed to be somewhat guilty by association because they should have been checking. And another big one that often arises, and it can arise in forms that you may not think are bribery, such as taking a client out for dinner. All these sorts of things can be considered bribery. And do not ever try to justify bribery in a CIMA case study exam. It is absolutely never acceptable. If there's any grey area at all, there's no grey area. It's black or white with ethics. If it's not completely ethical, it's unethical. That's one of the ways in which you should be assessing ethical issues in the strategic case study exam. So remember that CIMA expects you to be highly ethical and expect you to take the moral high ground and take action from an ethical perspective. So again, feeding back into what I was just saying about where it's all black and white. There's no grey areas in ethics. It's either ethical or it's not ethical. Always make a recommendation, but make a recommendation both the short and long term. This is where you really illustrate that you are thinking like a strategic manager. You are acting like a strategic level manager and therefore a strategic level student in the strategic case study. So deal with the specific issue in the short term, but rather than just move on afterwards, you identify the causes of that issue and you put plans in place to stop that from ever happening again. So for example, we've got a safety issue here in the example. That changing the safety procedure is how you deal with it in the short term to stop that immediate thing from happening again anytime soon. Then the long term is where you put more investment in better equipment, in better training, in better risk management, better in health and safety awareness. And that stops other similar issues from happening in the future. Remember that ethics is just the right thing to do. That's a good phrase to try and put into any answer that you may have. And a couple of key theories to use, such as the CIMA ethical principles. CIMA will obviously like it if you use their ethical principles. So we've got the 5 here. So integrity, confidentiality, professional behavior, objectivity, and competence and due care. Now, there is a tendency, and this goes back to what I was saying in the risk management section, to see something like this and think, oh, I know about the CIMA ethical principles. CIMA ethical principles are X, Y, Z. They're to do with this. Companies can use them to do that. And start telling me all you know about CIMA ethical principles. That's not what you need to do here. Mention the CIMA ethical principles, but then just talk about the one that is relevant. If the particular ethical issue is about confidentiality, don't spend ages telling me about objectivity and professional behavior. Just talk to me about confidentiality. And also the American Accounting Resolution Model. What's good about this is that whilst this specific model is not needed for the syllabus and to sort of speak about it in that sense, you can use the headers as a good way of assessing any kind of question to see are there any potential ethical things that you can talk about. So, such as a duty of care. Who do we owe a duty of care to? If there's been an issue with one of our products, who do we owe a duty of care to with regards to the quality of our products? What is the end result of that? Perhaps a drop in reputation. Why would that be bad? What are our key values? Our key values is empowering people to find their own inspiration to better themselves in terms of their health and fitness. So anything that stops them, that stifles them from doing that, is going against our values. And also, what are the cultural norms within our organization, also within the law of Newland, etc. And then finally, again, I've got that phrase of ethics simply being the right thing to do. So I advise you to try and get that phrase in any way you can. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it and more importantly, you have found it useful. I'd like to finish by just telling you a few things about the products that we produce here at Astranti and the ones that are part of our course. So these materials can all be purchased as part of the course or purchased individually. So we have our study text. We have 3 study texts for all the objective test exams. So 3 study texts for E1, P1, F2, F3, etc. But we also have the study text specifically for the case study exams, split into 2 parts. The first is about how to approach the exam, how to analyze the information, how to plan your answers, how to write your answers, and also the second part, which looks at the key theories from the objective test levels that are relevant to the particular case study. So if you are looking at P2, F2, E2 for the management exam, F3, P3, E3 for the strategic case study exam, and so on. We have our course videos, which look at how to plan your answers, how to manage your time effectively. These are the key reasons why people fail the exam. We have our pre-scene analysis, which looks at the pre-scene in a lot of depth, applies key information to that, and also concludes with the strategic analysis, where we look at the various different models in the SEMA syllabus and apply them to the case, and also the top 10 most likely issues to arise in your exam. Generally, we have a 70 to 80% accuracy rate on our top 10 issues. Our industry pack, which details in great depth the history and the current contemporary issues within the particular industry that the pre-scene is based on. We also have 20 to 25 industry examples that you can use within your answers. We have mock exams that can be purchased with or without marking and feedback, where you can get some real exam practice in, look for the kinds of things that the examiner is going to bring up in the exam, and also get marking and feedback from expert markers who have marked for SEMA and for us for many years, who know exactly the kind of things that the examiner is looking for, exactly the kinds of mistakes that students often make, and can provide lots of detailed feedback to ensure that you improve on your performance. We also have our master classes, which are 2 day-long classes which look at all the key issues facing students in the exam. We will also go through live planning, showing you how to plan your answers effectively, how to write your answers effectively. Again, key things that cause people to fail the strategic case study exam, or any of the case study exams for that matter. And also, if you do sign up for our course, provided that you have filled out your forms, provided that you have submitted your mocks, provided you have done everything to show that you have really given it your all to try and pass this exam, we also offer a pass guarantee, giving a free resit to anyone who fails the exam.